Okay, so 4 o'clock, really appreciate you coming to the webinar. Having been a teacher myself, I know it's pretty hard at the end of the day, but like fantastic that you come on board. So, and very much appreciated. So today's webinar is about Smart Lab. So that's short for Lesson Activity Builder. Basically, it's very, very quick and easy to use. Fantastic on students' devices, and I'll show you how to do that, and we might be able to have that experience ourselves, but also great at the board as the picture in front of you is showing. So today on the webinar we have myself, Kevin Daly. So I'm Smart's I often call myself Smart's tame teacher, so taught for many years, but now work for Smart. And our moderator is Crystal Ryan. And Crystal will take, if there's any questions, just drop them into the chat pod on the go to webinar part on your right, and we'll answer those at the end. So I will try to keep this pretty timely, so I won't go past 4:30, hopefully. So, okay. So Smart Learning Suite, as you know, comprises of Notebook, Smart Lab, Smart Response, and Smart AMP. Today we're really focused on Smart Lab. Basically, it's game-based activities for students that can be created really, really, really quickly and easily. Next week, we'll be talking about Smart Response and feedback in terms of students. So Smart Lab, very template orientated, so it just means it's really, really easy for you as teachers to create content. So it's just a 3-step process. It basically works with any device. So Smart pride themselves on being device agnostic, and all the game components are pretty high graphics, sound, and they keep students very engaged, and that aids retention. So the thinking behind game-based learning with Smart is that really with students these days, gamification is very, very important from the point of view of engagement and retention. So last year we had our Inspire Greatness conference, which was free for teachers in October last year in Sydney, and we had one of our keynote speakers was Bron Stuckey, who I'd suggest if you search her up on the internet, she's really, really good on game-based stuff. But also we'll, when we send out the recording of this session, we'll also add some gamification links for you, so in case you're sort of interested. A lot of you may be already going down the gamification, game-based learning approach. So, and there's a fair bit of research being done around student engagement, retention, and gamification. Some of that you can find at the Smart website. So today, basically, I'm going to hit the lab icon shortly and show you what's in lab, but we're looking at not all the activities in lab. So next week, we're looking at response 2, which is your assessment, and we're looking at shout it out. But in this session, we're really looking at the gamification aspects. So you've got close, flip out flashcards. You'll see samples of these as we go through. You've got games, which I'll show you right at the end, match them up, rank order, all really simple to create, really easy. So I'm just going to go to the lab icon. So it's up here, so you can see it says Smart Lab. When I click on it, a window will open, and it gives me a whole lot of options around what I would like to pick. So those ones that I've just talked about, match them up, label and reveal, game show, rank order, they're all there for you, really easy to use. If there's a device needed, so a student device, it does alert you to that fact. Probably the best way to get engaged with Smart Lab is to use it yourself with a couple of classes just to get used to it. I can tell you from my classroom experience that kids love it. They love using it on their devices, and they also like using it on the screens. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm really keen that you might be able to use Lab tomorrow in your classroom. Works really well on our interactive panels, but it will work on the older Smart boards as well. So if you've got an old board with a projector, this will still work. The place to go to get content, if you don't want to create it yourself, is to go to Smart Exchange. So I'm just going to give you a little live demo of what you might do to get some lab activities to use with your students tomorrow. So I'm just going to the internet. I'm going to Smart Exchange, and if you've never been there, there's fantastic resources for teachers. So you can see we can search by subject, we can search by year, and we can also here search by file type. And one of the file types that you'll notice is lab activities. When you click on lab activities, and I'll just change my, I'll just change the United States because I know it's got a fair few more than we have in Australia. So when we click on lab activities, we see them all here. So here's one for prefix and suffix, nouns and verbs. They're quite small downloads. You can click to preview them. Multiplication. So I'll just click on one here. You can preview them if you want, but I'm just going to download this and I'll show you how easy it is to put it into your notebook. So it says nouns and verbs. It's called a gallery item, but it is actually a lab activity that fully works. So I'm going to open it in a notebook. You'll notice I'm using notebook 17.1. I'm using the most current version. But when that opens up, it'll appear as one page in my notebook. A little bit slow, sorry, it's probably just my internet. So here's my Smart Lab activity, and I'll talk you through, you'll see several of these as we go through. So very easy to use, nouns, verbs, basically students pull the object up, etc. So I've got a couple of options to get that into my existing notebook. So I'm using this notebook here called Webinar 2 for today. My options are these. I can either click on the page and I can copy it and then paste it, but a much simpler way, once you've downloaded a couple of lab activities from Exchange, is to drag the page down to your notebook icon. You'll see that the notebooks that are open appear. Bring it over to the one that you want it to appear in and simply, and I'll just drop it in and just drop it in, and it then becomes part of your notebook for you to edit and change. So really simple way for you tomorrow, if you've got existing notebooks, to drop some lab activities in that you can use. So, okay, Smart Exchange, just so you know, is being revamped. In Australia, we're putting up content for Smart Exchange. I'll talk a bit more about that later as well. So, okay, I'm just moving along with my notebooks here, with my notebook pages. So here, I just want to show you the basics of, and I'll show you how to build a lab activity after from scratch, but I just want to show you the basics that we have here. So I've got a sound icon, and hopefully you can hear that. So I've got a refresh button. So when I use my activity, and we can see, okay, when the sound's on, I know that one's quite loud. So, and the third thing I've got is I've got an edit button. So I'm just going to click the edit button and show you how this was built. All lab activities are just a 3-stage build. Okay, so I'm going to change the background for this one. So here's my content, and we'll talk more about how to get content in really easily into your lab activities and how to save that content as lists later on. So here's my content. When I go next, I see a variety of backgrounds. So I'll just pick a different, so we're on this background. I'll just pick this pirate one, and you can see that it's high graphics, high sound. It's that gamification stuff that we're looking for. So content background, basically at that point, click finish, and my lab activity has been created and changed. Why might we do that? Repetition is very important for retention, so I might do this in several different formats and ways. I might bring kids up to the board, I might push it out to kids' devices, and I'll show you that a little bit later on. In fact, I might show you that now. So to push it out to kids' devices, and you can do this yourself at the moment. If you're on an internet-enabled device, if you just put in classlab.com, and I've got an individual number here that's particular to me, Kevin Daly, called 75222842. So if you go to classlab.com and you put that number in, it'll ask for your name, and you can see that I'm waiting for students to connect. If you're able to do that, hopefully a couple of you are, maybe Crystal, if you could do it as well, then I can see that somebody's getting on. So when I see the students start to come on, what I can then do is start this for students. So with this lab activity, I could have a couple of kids do it at the board. Me as the teacher, I could do it at the board. But if my students have iPads, Chromebooks, we don't mind what the device is because we're device agnostic. I can actually ask the students, so Janine's come on, Shell's come on, well done, thank you. So this stage of the day, you're doing fantastic. So you can see what these people, Dorothy, Janine and John, will see is when I start the activity, and I'll just have to sort of describe this for you, but basically when I start the activity, their devices will update, and they can actually run this activity on their device. So we've got a lot of, we've got high graphics, high visuals, we've got a strong gamification element, but we can also push this out to student devices in the classroom. Lots of ways to create interesting repetitions of content, and that's what we're really interested in with this stuff. And if you read the Gamification Resources, you'll read more about that as well. So hopefully those people are experiencing that. So maybe type something in the chat box. I'm sure you are. It's always worked for me in the past. So I don't know if anyone else got on. I know we've got about 5 or 6 on, which is great. And it says you're all playing. So fantastic. So, okay. I just want to show you lists. When using and saving lists is really an easy way to use Lab because you can use existing content that you have. So I'm just going to build a lab activity from scratch. So I've got a blank page. I'm going to go to my little lab icon. And for this one, I'm just going to use some flip cards. So you can see we've got flashcards that teach one-to-one correspondence. I'm just going to say that's what I'd like to do. At this point, you can see that I've got no content in here, and you would think, oh, I'm going to have to write all this stuff in. But basically, I click here, and here I've got Hindi fruits. So this was a language one. When I click on it, because I've pre-saved these lists, and I'll show you how to do this, basically I can use that material really quickly. I go next. I just pick what type of background I'd like. So don't forget, it's always just a 3-step process. I go finish, and my lab activity is complete. For those people who are still with me, I think I've still got some students on. Yep. If I start this, their devices that, so a few of you disconnected, but their devices will update to this activity. And you can see that with this activity, I can use different languages as well as English. So using a list, I'm just going to go back to edit to show you. Using lists is a really good way to use existing content because you can copy and paste into your lists. Here, if I gave you this lab, you could click and save this list. So it would be part of your computer from then on. Also up here, I've got the little hamburger icon, and here I can manage content. So you can see that I've got angles, a flip out. It's a matched pair activity. I've got animals. I've got footy teams. This is just stuff I've been doing with teachers. I've even got lists of students, so I can use lists of students. I've got verbs. Any of these lists, once you've saved them, so if I click into nouns, I can go and edit those lists just by clicking in and changing them. I can bring in a picture, a JPEG if I want to. I'm just going to click cancel because I don't want to disturb my list. And you can see I've got a few options. Do I want a student list? Student lists are fantastic. You can just grab them out of your learning management system, drop them in, start of the year, you've got them forever, and there's lots of ways you can use them. I've got some single list, and I'll just cancel that. I've got match pairs, etc. Using lists will save you a lot of time. So I'll just give you an example of that. So I'm just going to go to my next activity. So this one, basically a friend of mine built this. So basically pictures at the front. So they're just little scanned in images of angles. So as the teacher, I might be up the front of the class and I might be asking kids to predict what sort of angle it is. Then what I could do is I could start that for the students. Those people who are still with me, your devices will update. But if I want to, I can actually go in and edit this list and very quickly reuse this lab activity. So if I click here to load, I will use Iconic Australia. When I click on it, I should have deleted the other ones first, but you can see that my content's actually come in. So, okay, really easy to use. The other nice thing with Smart is when you click on that icon, if you're worried about this, there is a help button that takes you out to some help. But I would strongly suggest if you're going to use Lab, get in the habit of using lists so you can revisit content. So you would have seen that I'd used some images there. Images are quite easy to use. Basically, if I click and I have a look here in my content, and this is a saved list for me, you can see on this side I've got the word, and on this side I've got a little JPEG. All I did was I went to the internet, I downloaded those JPEGs, and then I added them to my content. So it was Iconic Australia. So here's that list that you're looking at. And then I updated my lab activity and just dropped those in. So it's a matched pairs list. Really easy to use content. Just use JPEGs, they come in fine. And when you're doing this, or at any stage during setting up your lab activities, you have the options of image or text. So all my images are down the right-hand side, all my text down the left. So the examples I've shown you so far have tended to be probably primary based. And when we go into our backgrounds, a lot of our backgrounds are pretty much primary, high level, high graphic, high sound for primary kids to engage with. I have to be honest, when I've done this, even with year 10 kids, even though they might go, oh, it's a bit babyish, Mr. Daly, they still want to get up there and play with it. So don't ever feel using some of these more primary backgrounds, you're going to disengage your secondary students. But I just wanted to show you that there is, and there will be more being developed, there is a simple background to address that issue. So I'm just going to press finish and update this lab activity so it becomes more something that I might use with secondary kids if they felt that the other stuff was a little bit too primary. So I'll just slip over that. So I've just created that lab activity twice just so you see it. So using images, and I'm using a secondary background versus, and I'll just go back and change it. And I think the repetition is important for you to see this. So I'm just going to click on the edit again. I'm going to change keep my content the same. And I've used my content from the list, but here next, I'm just going to use a primary background. It would be fine with up to middle years, trust me, but it really is that simple. So, okay. When you are using, when you are using Smart and you want to use images, very, very easy to do. One of the activities that's available to you, and I've just got a little French example here, is one called label. So when we go back into our Smart Lab icon, one of our activities is called label and reveal. Where are we? Label and reveal, this one here. How that's used, so it's very dependent on images, but how that's used, so it's a French lesson. Here, when I click on the icon, and I might ask the students to say in French what that is. I then reveal. So it's label and reveal. Here, little hint, and then reveal. So really lots of ways you could use that in a lot of different contexts. So it doesn't have to be a French lesson, it could be a science lesson, anything. So I'm just thinking more for secondaries in terms of some of the activities that are available to you. So we also have game elements within our lab activities. So again, very easy to use. You can see here I've got a pretty simple activity, just where do these line up in terms of closest to the sun. So, and I've got this set as if I get it wrong, it actually throws it out, okay? You don't have to do that, you can put them in, and at the end you can check them, which helps in terms of kids predicting stuff. But you can see I've got three things here. One, I've got this little hat. So when I click the hat and I click the button, I can have lists of my students. So I can ask the students to come to the board and do this. If I pick again, I've got another student. So the little cog on the right allows me to adjust this activity. So just click on the hat again. So we've got this to pick students, or to pick content, or to pick ideas. The other thing we have is we have a timer. Timer's a really good thing to be using with students. So this activity shouldn't take very long, but to put a little bit of gamification, I suppose, into it, and imagine the students doing it at the board, and I go, I'm just about to start the timer. Jill and Henry, I want you to come up and have a go at this. If you don't do it in the limited time, you've only got that 1 minute to do it. And then the other thing we have buzzers for correct answers and incorrect answers. And again, your buzzers, the little icon allows you to adjust those. So again, just adding some very simple gamification elements to our lab activity. So just that little star there always appears. It allows me to add those things, buzzers, randomizers, and timers, and there's different ways of working with those within your lab activity. Okay, hopefully everything's making sense. So one of the things I did want to show you, I'm a big believer in, with teachers are very busy people, I can see how this would engage students. So here I've got a very simple close activity, just drag and drop, and we can check it at the end. If I go into my edit, we'll see how this was built. So here it's just a little basically Word document, and what I've done to create the blanks is just a double click. Again, really easily done. You can check when prompted or instantly, or don't check at all, it's up to you. And define the blanks just mean that's what I've been doing here. However, if you just think about creating that, you've got to type it in there. But if I think about a topic that I might be doing, let's say I was doing the planets, and I just go to the internet, and maybe I use a little bit of Wikipedia, and you're never going to be in trouble with copyright, because we're only going to use a tiny little bit of this. But basically, copy from the internet, taken into my lab activity, and I would then paste it and define my text. Similarly with your lists in lab, so I've got some examples called prime number, and I was never very good at maths. I'm first to, I'll be very honest about that. But in my lists, you'll see I've got one called prime number and not prime number. So when I did these, so I've got a single list, not prime number. When I just copied and pasted these from the internet straight into this list. I saved it so I could reuse it. So the whole thing of, we want to be making this interesting content. We want to be in the world of gamification, but we don't want to be creating a lot of work for you. A couple of things here. So I've tried to show you today a way to approach Smart Lab, a way to use it in the classroom, like at the board, on the student's device, etc. A couple of these you'll notice, monster quiz. So we've seen label and reveal, flip it out. we've seen fill in the blanks, but there's a couple that are pretty game orientated. So there's game show, monster quiz, and there's a racing game as well in here. So basically, if I click on monster quiz, and just think about your students, you want that bit of reinforcement at the end of the lesson. So monster quiz, really good one to use. Again, you can reuse your content to reinforce. The game show one similarly and speed it up, but they're probably more gamification, like actually playing a game in teams. You can push it out to the students' devices. I didn't really want to go through all that with you at the moment, so I just put a little video into my notebook, and it's really nice in Notebook. You can drop a video in, you can play it from within your notebook, and hopefully you can hear this. Crystal, can you just tell me if the sound's coming through?
Can just hear it, okay? Yeah.
You are going to be working as a team to grow your monster egg and hopefully to hatch it. Ready?
So you can see the students using it on their own device, but they are in teams and they're playing the game. That's the 3 teams. They're picking their answers, and as they pick their answers, if they're correct, their monsters grow. So highly engaging.
You managed to finish us in 1 minute and 32 seconds. So let's review. That means you get to look at your answers and the ones you found tricky.
So there's lots of content like that for you to see how to use SmartLab. So I've just listed a few things here, and I'll just show you. So Smart has its own YouTube channel. So I'm just going to flick from the internet to my slides here. So if I go to a site called Ed2Ed or Educator, basically it's teachers putting up YouTube channels about how to do stuff with Smart. There's really good content here, but if you search on Lab, there'll be ideas for you about how to use Lab within the classroom. Smart also have a training site, and if you just put in Smart Technologies Training rather than Smart Training, if you put in Smart Training, you end up with a lot of different sites, but put in Smart Technologies, but you can see it's training Smart Tech. So there's a little interactive lesson, and if you want to produce a certificate for your professional learning, you can. Again, another really good way to learn Lab at in your own time. Also at the Smart Support site, so I've just searched on Lab up here, you can see that there's a lot of tutorials, and if you're a person who prefers to read printouts, there's printouts, etc. Within the Smart Support site. So lots of places where you can go to get help, so you could take this into your classroom tomorrow and use it. So we have Ed2Ed, we've got our online training courses, we've got lots of videos, and you'll get a copy of this tomorrow, and I'll put my email there. You can always email me directly. I'm happy to answer any questions or show you how to do stuff. One thing I will alert you to, at the Smart ANZ website, and I'll just go back so you see it. So it's just smarttechanz.com, and here there's a whole lot of information for you around Smart in Australia and New Zealand. But we will be posting bits and pieces up there, but we'll also be posting Australian content up at Smart Exchange. Now, Smart Exchange is being revamped, so this might take a little bit, but we've got a strong focus on putting in some stuff that's pretty secondary orientated, that contains things like lab activities. I know I'm going a little bit quickly for you, sorry, but so loading here. Yep. So I could start that for you. We could do the activity. So we're aware at Smart that we want to support secondary teachers in this journey as well. So Now it's 4:29. I've left 1 minute for questions. Hopefully that all made sense and you've got a fair bit out of it. You will get a copy of the webinar, and don't forget those online resources, and we are putting stuff up. So, okay, and then Crystal, were there any questions?
Hi Kev, can you tell me, can ClassLab be used on the older boards and older versions of Notebook?
Yeah, look, it works beautifully on the newer interactive flat screen panels. I mean, that's what it's been designed for, like you can ink over stuff and rub stuff out. But there should be nothing to stop you using it on an older panel with a projector. And I'd just love you to have the experience of, whenever I do a training session with teachers, I always go, if there's one thing I want you to take away to use tomorrow, please use Smart Lab, and just go to Smart Exchange and grab some activities down, edit them, really quick and easy, and just see, put your kids at the board, push your resources out to your kids if they've got devices, and you'll be amazed at what a difference it makes to the classroom. So, any other questions, Crystal?
Jen's asked, how are the buzzers to be used?
Could you just say that again? I just missed it.
How are the buzzers to be used?
So the buzzers, basically, like, you can alter and change them, but basically, if I'm about to have a go at answering a question, think game show, I can press my buzzer to answer the question, or I can press my buzzer to show that I finished it. So it's that gamification aspect, but really great at the board. I think there's actually a little video at Ed2Ed on that, where you see kids using the buzzers. But best thing is to have a play around with it yourself, create some, get kids to use it. They love doing this stuff. So, any other questions, Crystal?
Jan's asked, it would be helpful to be able to choose fonts. Is this something that may happen in the future?
Sorry, I'm just missing you a little bit, just my internet, I think. Yeah, go again.
It would be helpful to be able to choose fonts. Is this something that may happen in the future?
At the moment, yeah, you can't. You can, and it's probably a little bit of a different question, but you can actually set up default fonts for your notebooks, the same as you would in within a Word document. So we've got a school that we work with that have a very particular font they want to use. At the moment, the font within Lab, I don't think that they would have changed, but I will alert you to the fact if you go to the help menu and you go submit a feature request, Smart gives an email and they're really responsive to what teachers want to happen. So a feature request like that to Smart, you may find in the next iteration of Notebook and Lab that you might find that your request has been addressed. So if that's a big issue for you, please email me and I'm happy to follow up with Smart and see if that's in the future directions. So,
Kev, I've got
any other questions? Yep.
Another question. What Smart Lab game can you suggest we use as a student attendance role?
That's a bit of an interesting one. Just let me have a think. I suppose I was going to suggest fill in the blanks, but that's got a limitation on a number of words. Yeah, the problem, actually, come on next week because I'm going to show response and shout it out. Shout it out would be perfect to capture the kids in the class that day. And if you remind me of the question, I think shout it out would probably be ideal to do that. The issue you've got with having maybe 25 students in your class is that some of the activities, they limit the number of words or the amount of content. So I'm just a little bit mindful of that. I'm happy to have a play with that, and if you email me, I'll try and get back to you if I see a solution to that. But shout it out would certainly do it, and you could save the shout it out into your notebook, and you'd have a daily record of the kids. So, any other questions, Crystal?
That's it for questions. Thanks.
No worries. I've gone a tiny bit over time, and I do usually try and keep these to the exact time because we really appreciate you coming on at the end of the day. As I said, next week I'm doing response, which is assessment, and I'm going to talk about feedback. shout it out. And I think the following week I'm doing using the Smart Gallery in the classroom. So please feel free to register and join us, and hopefully you found today useful. So we might just end it there. Thanks very much, Crystal. Okay.